Okay, well, hello everyone and welcome to this session. You are all muted, so you won't be able to communicate with me, but if there are any questions, we're going to look at those towards the end of the session. So unless there's something really burning there, if you could hold out and then ping that note over towards the end, then we can tackle that as we step through. So my name's Dave Bailey, not Sarah. If you've joined and seen that the admin on this session is Sarah, I'm the marketing director here at PointSolutions, and I'm going to be talking you through this session, probably which will take us close to about 60 minutes or thereabouts. So the title of the slot is Office 365 as your HR management system. What we're going to try and do here is pick out some of the key areas focused on the business case element. Okay, so although we're obviously talking about Office 365, and I'm guessing that most of you, or if not all of you on the call, will know what that means. If not, we'll fill in some gaps. We're actually focusing on this bit, the SharePoint Online piece, which is where we've done a lot of work around the HR, people and learning systems space. So there's a couple of bullets to kick us off, really. We're going to cover section this out into a couple of key areas. I'm going to look at who we are very briefly, just to add a little bit of credibility in there. Going to look at the need. The question is why SharePoint Online? Also look at the ROIs, which are key, and then look at what the market's got to offer there as well. So the first bit really is just to add a little bit of credibility to those of you that don't know us. We're essentially SharePoint specialists. We've been doing that for over 13 years, and we're based here over in the UK, where I'm delivering this session from today. So we do a lot of work, the type of things you'd expect from a specialist business, largely focused around consultancy services, system design and specification, all using, which is key, all using the SharePoint platform. We also work with a lot of well-known brands. We provide a lot of agile development services as well, where larger companies bring us in to do little bits and fill gaps for them. But the bit that really we're focusing on today is the people system bit, and that's really the focus of this session. So it starts really with looking at the need, and if we look at the contact center space, the concept of unified communications across contact center has been around for a long time, and the real focus there is the focus around the external and internal customer journey. So not only customers but also the internal customers and how their experience should be unified. I guess the truth is now that companies expect to have a simplified solution to their business process needs. So they simply expect things to just work, and they expect things to simply connect together. I'm talking both there from a systems perspective and also from a device perspective as well. We all know that the internet, the launch of the internet and the use of smartphones, the Generation I, is largely proportioned to the expectations now that people have around what their system should do, because there's this kind of bombardment of data coming from lots of different sources. And the truth is, we carry all these experiences, the web, the mobile, all these things we do in our day-to-day lives, back into our working professional scenarios. So those things that touch us in the everyday do affect us in the working day as well, and our expectations have changed. And although this is the age of disruption, I think people are really looking for an antidote to that, and that's where we need to look at that unified experience. Okay, so we've seen a big trend, a big shift in our own activity in terms of our workload. If we look at the last 12-month period as a SharePoint specialist business, we started to work with SharePoint probably about 2 years ago. About 12 months ago, about 60% of our, Office 365, about 60% of our business was Office 365 focused, and now it's probably around the 85% mark. So in just over 12 months, there's been a massive ramp up in terms of people coming to us saying, we're looking to do this, it's in Office 365. The bit that we mostly focus on is, as we've said, is the SharePoint Online piece, but it does extend beyond that, and I'll unpick that as we step through this presentation. So obviously Office 365 is a growing brand. There's a growing business community, both from a SMB and from a corporate perspective. You'll probably know yourselves that it's hugely marketed by Microsoft. It's their fastest growing commercial product in Microsoft's history. Some stats for you there. There's over 50,000 new SMEs or SMBs signing up, that's businesses, signing up to Office 365 every month. And big corporations like Adobe, like the Ministry of Defence, are also getting on board. And you'll probably also know that Microsoft now have their own servers over in the UK to circumvent some of the challenges for large organisations and for the public sector as well. So there's also, this impacts the changing business model of the cloud solution provider. So now they're looking more towards finding apps, business products really, that can enhance Office 365. So their clients' needs have actually moved away from the traditional model of providing servers and hardware, more towards a SaaS product portal approach, where people are looking actually to find something that will deliver a business requirement. We've got to also look at the concept of the citizen integrators, and we recently employed some new marketing staff in our business, and as part of that requirement, we require them to wear many hats. So not only do they need to be familiar with the standard marketing mix, and they need to be able to work with the digital mix, comms, strategy, and even design. So I think even in larger businesses as well, people are being asked to wear many hats, and this is where the concept of the citizen integrators come in. That's really perpetuated by the new products that we can see in Office 365 that have come online, which are designed for the non-technical users. So we've got products like Flow and Power Apps, etc., which are helping people to get more value from Office 365. Now this is a good thing, but will also create its own challenges. And if it's not managed properly, it could undermine the integrity of the solutions. So there's a new breed of citizen integrators, both form a threat for our businesses, but also there's an opportunity. And ultimately, they'll fulfill the need within the business. And what that need will do is it'll wed organizations ever closer to the Microsoft stack. So essentially, people can get more value from the products that are in Office 365, which is allowing them to in turn get more value from the product, and that provides a real return on investment for businesses. Okay, so there's also something that that we like to phrase as the Marmite factor. So when we're looking at SharePoint, there's a few key considerations here, and even myself, who've been 3 years into SharePoint, I'm relatively new, but I've seen and I've experienced firsthand the Marmite factor. And what I mean by that is people tend to either love or hate SharePoint and tend to fit into one of those camps. So we'll start with the love bit. So what we find there is that people love SharePoint because of its flexibility. There's a trust element, because it's a Microsoft product. There's a sense of the familiar. So Those that are used to using Microsoft products such as Word and Excel, they'll find that they can access the ribbon, and all these things help to make the user experience and the user journey more comfortable. I guess those organizations that don't like, that have the hate element of the Marmite factor, that's largely born out of poor user interface, usually found in earlier versions of the system, and also I think largely in-house projects that span out of control quickly because people could get under the bonnet and they could start to find their way around the system. People soon got unstuck, and that left a bitter taste in people's mouths. Now the trend shows us that there are two main personalities that we speak to from an Office 365/HRMS perspective, and you probably guessed that's both IT and the HR people. Some of the reasons that the IT guys like the idea of their hosting their HRMS in Office 365 are some of the reasons I've touched on. For HR managers, their love tends to come more from the entry point element. So we can change people's entry point into a HR system, and for instance, a great example there is to provide an intranet as that entry point. So it also enables businesses to start focusing on engagement, trying to help their employees become part of their brand through the various communications. And I think, although we still see it, it's rarer now that we find businesses that are focusing on the KPI element of communications. So there was for a long time, and there's lots of evidence to support the fact that by simply putting your KPIs and your mission, vision, values on your intranet platform, you're not going to engage your workforce. Or there are some instances, but less so. So employees can quickly get turned off by that. But it's also been proven that by surfacing people-focused triggers, such as allowing employees to make holiday bookings or to contribute to their learning plan, we can engage employees a lot easier and a lot deeper engagement there, and we can get their buy-in. So this way we can help to make users' lives easier by providing a window into all that they need for a day-to-day basis. So it's a single sign-on and it's a single view. By doing this, we can improve their user experience further, and we can also, part of the work we've done is we've extended the user profile across the Office 365 platform, so that there's already a poll, there's already a tick box for people using the HR system and diving out into other areas of Office 365. It feels like a linear process. It feels like they're in the right place. So a key element to the user experience is obviously the system look, feel, and do. And in general, we find that you only get one opportunity to get this right. So the days of clunky, fussy design should be far from behind us, although we still do see some examples of that. Particularly when we're dealing with people's systems. We need to be focusing more on their personal experience. So we've invested a lot of time and a lot of resource into getting this user interface right. And we've created more of a human interface with easy navigation and clean, flat design methodology. Okay, so Office 365 already comes with a wide range of great products included. Products like Delve, OneDrive, and Power BI. So why not complement this existing platform by introducing HR management capabilities, which can extend out into application tracking, into learning management, all part of the same experience and all on the same technological platform. This removes integration points and helps to maximize save time and efficiencies. So we think this is a great idea, and so a lot of the work we've done here has been looking at blending the HRMS within your Office 365 stack. And finally, to create what we call PeoplePoint 365, which is our HRMS, which has been designed for Office 365. So it does all the kind of things you'd expect from a HRMS product. It starts with the ERM, which includes the employee data and the security around that, the on and offboarding, self-service, things like organization charting, also applying remuneration and benefits and asset management as part of that. It also extends out from core to cover the key processes that you'd expect around managing holiday processing and timesheets, leave, expense and performance management. Essentially, there are 5 key themes of HR functionality, and they can all be modified to suit specific organizational needs. So we've drawn up a top 10 list, if you like, of key benefits. So when you're building a business case for Office 365 as your HRMS, there are a number of key compelling points to remember, and I'm going to step you through some of those. So number 1, and I'm sure you guys on the call that are focused around managing people and the HR piece, we know that it's in any system, in fact, it's got to be easy to use, so it can actually look great and it can provide all the functionality that you'd require. But if it's not easy to use, so from a self-service point of view, but also easy to administer from a HR and line management point of view, then it's not going to get buy-in, it's not going to be adopted into the business. It's also a common requirement for a modern system is that it's got to be accessible all the time. So obviously Office 365, that's exactly where that Microsoft positioned that product as always available. It's obviously browser based, which supports that methodology. It's also got to provide self-service, and provide self-service as standard. So the idea there is around change management. If an employee wants to, or moves address, or gets married, change their next of kin, HR shouldn't be incumbent to manage that process. If a business wants an employee to be able to update their next of kin or the fact that they've moved house with some simple authorization, then let's allow them to do that. And I think that was one of the key things that we've found. Also, a system being modular is a big plus for organizations. So organizations and businesses don't always have to go, looking to go for the big bang. They can build up their system over time, picking the key functionality that they need for the here and now. Obviously, being SharePoint, it's wholly flexible. Reporting is a key one using SharePoint, so we utilize both the Excel services within SharePoint, being able to simply export data in and out of Microsoft Excel, but also using products like Power BI as well for charting. Onto charting and organizational charting, which we found in our journey was a bone of contention for many organizations, in that they were difficult to maintain, difficult to keep up, and difficult to manage. So when an employee onboards in our world, they automatically are assigned a place on that organization chart, and that can be split via region, country group, department, and job role. One of the key things there is that you can apply gap analysis, so you can start a succession plan and identify gaps and empty chairs in the business using that simple formula. Obviously, we've talked about reducing integration, and that's the whole concept why people are looking at Office 365. So everything's in one basket there. But there are systems that reside outside of that, such as payroll systems and other back office systems. That's not a challenge for us, because obviously as a software house, that's part of the process, part of our service offering. If we're looking at global administration, obviously there are organizations out there who have deployments overseas, and we operate this region, country group, department, job role categorization, which enables businesses to have different deployments of the systems in different countries, but have their own individual identity. So it might be, for instance, that language would change in a European country or in America, different to the UK. Also, terminology can change there, and obviously the data that's presented. But the beauty there is that it's all wrapped up in one global system. So it's a cost-effective way of helping to split that out for those organizations that need that. There's also the SaaS option. Obviously, SaaS lends itself with Microsoft's own service, software as a service. So we've actually provided a SaaS model as part of our offering as well to bring ourselves in line with that process. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just have a little look at some of the functionality. Just going to pause the session for 1 second. Okay, so what I'm going to show you here is just a little bit of a tour around some of the key features and some of the key user interface of our particular product. Now we're going to start here by looking at an employee login, which is this screen in front of you here. So what we've done here is we've stripped out a lot of the menu choices and just kept this on the left hand side, and we use these 4 quadrants to present data. So in this example we've got a chart here which can be presenting data from pretty much anywhere in the system, and then this second quadrant in this example is utilized to present data and quick links out to key functionality. So we're not going to run a demo here, trying to keep this quite high level to talk about the key benefits and features of this approach. And obviously tasks can be presented here, and you can have some traffic lighting and control particular processes around things like policies. Now if you look at the HR manager's view, obviously here our requirements are slightly different. We want to be able to dive into the background and start making changes and start to bring the system to life. We can also present data from other areas such as the onboarding process, and we can do some filtration using this region, country, group, department criteria on things like the satisfaction linked to the onboarding experience, if that's relevant. I guess what I'm showing here is that there's a bunch of ways of presenting data, and that what we try to focus businesses on is the user interface, trying to make this as user-friendly as possible, making sure that it's rapid and that actually there's flexibility in there for organizations that need it. You can see this is focused around absenteeism, so we can see the cost of absenteeism here based on the individuals, and we could dive in and start to filter that to take a deeper look at some of those areas. We can surface data around return to work and provision on self-certification. The final view here, which I've dialed into, I'll just minimize for this presentation, is a line manager view. So in this example, we're focused more on our team and things like our team's overdue policy. So we're managing by exception in this scenario. We're only actually focused on those individuals who haven't signed up to various areas of the policy. We can obviously do reporting around expense budgets and any relevant data that we want to. Okay, we just jump back into the presentation, just had a quick view around there, and the reason that I'm showing you that is that we spent a lot of time working with various stakeholders to make sure that the user interface is as fitting as possible for the scenario that we're working with. So obviously the the HR market, the HR systems market, is flooded with different offerings, different vendors, and different solutions, ranging from the SaaS model, which we've touched on very loosely here, which is more of a modern, agile approach, to some of the more traditional incumbent providers, perhaps where there's not as much flexibility there to make change within the system, or if there is, there's usually, it can sometimes be cost prohibitive. And we position ourselves okay. Sorry, just checking you guys can see the screen there. I think we might have had a bit of a glitch. Can you ring Gary and ask him if he can see my screen? I'll be on a call. You might have to go outside and then just give me the heads up. Okay, so apologies for that. I think we might have, hopefully you can see my screen there. Okay, so just picking up on this point then. So in terms of positioning, which is key really for us, looking at the propositions around Office 365, we position ourselves firstly, which is the key part, as part of Office 365. So it's part of the SharePoint Online ecosystem. So where this is a driver for organizations, this is where we're a good fit. And secondly, and equally as important, we don't take a light route. So I know there are some light versions of products out there in the marketplace. We don't position ourselves as a download and go. So we don't place our offerings in the App Store. We believe that what differentiates us, one of the key differentiators, is that as part of the implementation, there's a big transfer of knowledge there, and the system's probably about 80% ready to go, and that extra 20% is the key really that makes it fit for your organization. It's the key tweaks and the key bends that make it deliver the outputs that you need. So there's still occasion when we're asked the question by organizations who are looking to adopt and build and deploy their own HR management system within SharePoint Online or indeed SharePoint on premises. And we still get asked that question, and businesses come to us and say, so what's the business case for this approach? And I think that the simple answer from our perspective is that since 2014 we expended 700 plus man days on our solution, and we currently have around 100 plus development man days scheduled into our software assurance log. So when we start to explain that type of journey to organizations, then it soon becomes apparent that it's not always the in-house self-build is the best route. In fact, a quick anecdote is that I spoke with a large prospect yesterday. They've got 1,200 staff, and they have been working for a number of months to build their own processes, mainly around holidays, and they have lots of different deployments of solutions, and they've come to the conclusion that actually They want something where someone's actually been through all the pain and they've taken all the time to get it right, and they're continuing the investment in the solution. And as part of that story, we do work with market leading specialists, particularly around the HR space. So individuals that have worked as heads of department for some of these brands that you can see on the slide. And essentially our work never finishes. So if we look at this year, if we look at 2017, in Q1 to Q4, we'll see the bringing online of push notifications. We'll be utilizing webhooks, developing our own web APIs, and our own mobile-centric experience. So essentially, the product will never stop evolving. And obviously, being SharePoint, being wholly scalable, the product suits itself well for small and large organizations. We have organizations with around 50 employees using the system, right up to businesses that are 50 times that. So a couple of examples here. There are some businesses within these slides that have global deployments, and again, they're taking advantage of the fact that they can render the solution relevant for their employees out in far off countries, and circumvently for those that are based in the UK. There's also a kind of market need, if you like, in terms of a vertical market around the not-for-profit sector. And I think this comes from the fact that Microsoft provide quite an agile offering in terms you can get quite a lot for little or no cost, or some contribution from the Microsoft not-for-profit service that they provide. And this is really becoming apparent in the type of inquiries and the type of noise that's coming from the not-for-profit sector. Okay, so there are a couple of key takeaways here which I want to just share with you. One of them really is around the number one, which is around the fact that, which is the essential point really, is that we're maximizing Office 365. So we're not actually going out and we're not building something that's built in some bespoke code, or something that's going to sit on its own or reside separately from what we're investing as a business. So if our technology strategy is telling us that we're going cloud and we're going Office 365, then this is where the fit tends to be for organizations. So that's key, and it's key takeaway number one. Also, that the HR management system can be extended. So it's extensible. It can become your application tracking system, and that's a seamless shift from HR into application tracking. And it can also become your learning management system as well. And beyond that, it can become, as we've touched on, your intranet, so you can focus on news, information sharing and collaboration. And then it can actually leap outside of the Microsoft stack, and you can start to actually bring in third-party solutions in there as well. So it's about that holistic experience. It's flexible, and hopefully those of you that know SharePoint will already know that. As I mentioned in the Marmite piece, it can sometimes, in the earlier iterations of the system, have been a bit of a pain point for businesses. But the fact that it's flexible means that it can bend and flex to your needs, and that's not a huge leap. It's something that can be transpired relatively easy. And the one there, number 4, ownership versus product, really. What we're saying there is that the IT and super users and citizen integration teams can get involved in taking the product forward, but they're not having to go through the pains and challenges of spending a great deal of resource, time and money in developing their own product that essentially will never stop being developed. Okay, so that's fundamentally the guts of the presentation that we wanted to share with you today. So has anyone got any questions there? We have myself and our technical team on the call as well. So if there are any questions there, we can field those across and answer those for you as part of the session. Okay, well, we don't seem to have anything that requires any immediate response. So what we're going to, okay, we have had some questions through there, which is more around the cost side of things. Now, obviously my details are on screen there. I'm happy to obviously set up a full demonstration and talk about the various cost models and options for this type of approach for what we've created, which is PeoplePoint 365, if people want to look at that. Also happy to take any questions via my personal email if people want to take that route as well. In terms of timeframes for deployment, we are currently operating a 4 to 6 week lead time for starting new projects, but the answer really to the time frame for deployment is based on how much of the system you want to deploy. The product itself is made up of around 10 modules, starting with core, and then there are different themes. So time and attendance focuses on the holiday management, the leave management, and the timesheet management. Each of those themes is then actually broken down, so it's a difficult one for me to give a high-level answer to. But if you, Jonathan, want to send me an email, perhaps we could have a call and I could unpick what your particular requirements might be, or what the focus of your question is, and get back to you on that basis. Okay, I'm just going to step through some of these other questions, if you just bear with me a second. Okay, I've got a question here. So I think we had a bit of a freeze during the session, so I'm happy to jump back onto our demo environment and show you around some of the user interface, which I'll do in a second. Before that, I just want to check that one of my technical colleagues is on the call here.
Yep, I'm here.
Hi there, Gary.
Hi there.
This might be one that you can add some detail to. There's a question here: how future-proof is your solution? Do we have to turn features off in 365 to make sure an update doesn't break? Now, I could give a high-level answer to that. I'll let the expert answer it from his perspective. If you want to take that on, Gary.
Well, I guess in terms of the feature set that we use in SharePoint, we're obviously using the SharePoint add-in model. That's the preferred way of deploying applications into Office 365 to use SharePoint for holding your company information. So we're using that method. Obviously, that's still a valid deployment mechanism that Microsoft are published. There are different options, but we're always on the lookout for where Microsoft are heading in that direction, and making changes through, like Dave has already said, through the software assurance log to make use of some of these new features. So as an example, at the moment, we use workflow, but we know that flow is something that's new that looks like Microsoft are kind of going to that more modern way of doing workflows. So we're keeping an eye on that to move to that kind of way of producing the workflow side of our solution. So in terms of the future proofing, that is the way that we work. We're working very closely with Microsoft and the practices that they are pushing. So we don't have to turn any features off. Certainly not. We're using as much as we can at the moment, making sure we're using the right technologies at the right time. So I hope that's answered your question. But it's the one of the roles that certainly I'd have personally is to make sure that we're providing a solution that allows your company to grow with Office 365 and make the use out of all these improvements that are being made in Office 365 that at the moment are being made at quite a quick pace. So it's keeping up with that and making sure that they're fit for purpose as well.
Okay, thanks for that, Gary. I think just to kind of add a tiny bit to that is that essentially we're not deploying directly into Office 365 as much. We're using the Azure service, which enables us to be protected from Microsoft's weekly updates in some instances. Okay, so I'm just going to share my screen again here and go back to the demo bit, because I think we had a bit of a freeze at some point. So, Gary, you just tell me if my screen's showing there, because I know you're in another office.
Yep, I can see that. Yep.
Right. Okay. So, so here a quick overview. This is an employee portal, an employee view. So we've got the self-service options in here. We could look at the organization chart and where that individual resides within that. An example of some of the types of charting, and we use these quick links to take us out to key functionality within the system. Again, I'm not going to start diving into starting an appraisal, but I'm happy to do that off the call if people want a full-blown demo. But just to explain that obviously the system would be branded in terms of the CSS, and then these 4 quadrants can be used to pretty much present data as you wish. So in this example, a HR manager has a lot more options on there, so we can get access to the setups, anything that you might want to turn on and off from a daily basis, rather than being incumbent on someone like ourselves to guide you through those changes. All that would be there for you to do. And we can apply filtration based on which is quite key, which is region, country, group, department criteria. And again, that lends itself to those larger organizations. Again, different types of charting. We can use Power BI, Excel, different charting processes, methods for different organizations based on their specific needs. And then if I just jump over to Line Manager, again, in a similar vein, but this time I'm focusing on things specific to my team. This has been squashed a little bit by the software that I'm presenting on. But if I jump on the absence dashboard, you'll see here we can start to do some analysis around absenteeism, look at the Bradford factor, ratio analysis, and various standard processes around recording absence within a business. So that's pretty much it. That's all I showed. It's very high level at this point. Really, what we're trying to convey is the whole notion that there is a new way of working. We believe that using Office 365 as your HR management system has some key benefits for organizations in terms of ROI, in terms of the strategic decisions that businesses are making, and ultimately simplifying people's lives as well. I've had another question on here around getting access to the recording. We can obviously share the recording with you. We have your details from sign up, so those that would like that, we can arrange to have that out to you through the guys at Combined Knowledge. Are there any other questions there, either technical or based on what you've seen during the session, that attendees would like me to answer? Okay, there's a couple of questions coming through. Okay, we've got. I think there's a couple of you guys interested in the actual adoption time frame, in terms of how long it would take to implement the system. I guess typically between 3 and 6 months is a good answer, based on the type of functionality you want and the complexities, and obviously any changes that you'd want to the system as it resides out of the box to make it fit your specific organizational needs. So hopefully that answers that one a bit more firmly. Again, if you want to send me an email, we can have a call and I can give more detail to that. Okay, Gary, are you still on this session?
Sorry, I just unmuted myself.
There's a technical one here for you around the ability to integrate with on-premise data sources, around such as SQL, and there's a particular reference to SAP B1 on site.
Well, I guess from the SharePoint side of things, because it's based on using a SharePoint site and then we deploy the app, then with using external data, then we will look to try and use the business connectivity services element of SharePoint. So you'd have to have the enterprise version of SharePoint 2013 to use that functionality, but in terms of the integration, you could get that information into the SharePoint site, use that. I guess it be the question of, is the employee records in a separate system? I guess at the moment it would be an integration piece. It's something that we may be able to help you with as a bespoke piece of development, but because you're using SharePoint's got the tools to get at that external information quite easily.
Yeah, just again to support what Gary said, typically we look at integration on a case-by-case basis. We are Sage development partners and we work with a lot of the standard payroll systems as a matter that we actually are close to HR, and it tends to be a common requirement. So hopefully that answers that one. Now I've had a question around, does the solution have a document management element? Yes, it does, both in terms of the HRMS and handling contracts and the visibility of those contracts and onboarding recruitment documentation, right through to the full-blown IDM. We call it intelligent document management, where we're focusing on the actual tagging of data intelligence against the various documents, so they can be kept in one place but searchable to people with the right access. So that is part of the feature set within the system. Can it work alongside on-site clocking and machines for timesheets? The answer is yes. Again, it's quite a common requirement for us. We have a timesheet management piece, which I'm happy to show you offline, which will enable you to visualize where people are spending their time in the business and how much that time's been spent on what categories, but also to output that to actually invoice clients based on that, or to pay employees based on that data. And integration into clocking machines is quite a common requirement there. Obviously it depends on the particular system, but we can again take that offline if you wanted us to look at that one for you and give a more detailed answer. But the simple answer is yes. So I'm going to sign off now, and thank you all very much.